Sister found out she wasn't dad's daughter, left us for her by a dad in California, then suddenly wanted to reconnect after learning about dad's will. I honestly never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I really need to get this off my chest and maybe get some outside perspective. This whole situation has been eating at me for years, and now things have gotten even more complicated. 5 years ago, my sister Lisa's wedding turned into this huge mess that basically destroyed our family. It's still hard to talk about sometimes, but I need to explain everything from the beginning so it makes sense. I was 28 then, and Lisa was 25. We had always been super close, like freakishly close, according to most people who knew us. Even though I was 15 months older, we were basically joined at the hip. Grown up, I kind of took that closeness for granted. We did literally everything together, shared clothes, usually without asking, had all the same friends, and were always in each other's business. Our mom used to say she could never invite just one of us anywhere because we were a buy one get one free deal. Man, thinking back to our teenage years makes my heart hurt a little. We seriously did everything together, like we'd be up at 2 a.m. on a school night, sprawled on my bed eating contraband snacks we'd hidden from mom, just talking about the dumbest stuff. We had this whole system worked out for covering each other's backs too. If Lisa wanted to go to a party our parents definitely wouldn't approve of, I'd say she was studying at my friend Sarah's house when I wanted to meet up with this guy I was seeing, who looking back was kind of a 2. She'd tell mom and dad I was at the line library. We never got caught either. We were pretty good at the whole partner and crime thing. The amount of time we spent planning our future weddings was honestly ridiculous. Lisa was obsessed with having this perfect spring wedding. She wanted cherry blossoms everywhere, like she literally wanted to get married in a cherry blossom grove. She'd spend hours showing me pictures of these gorgeous Japanese gardens and planning how she'd recreate that whole vibe. Meanwhile, I was dead set on having this super dramatic winter wedding with fake snow and icicle lights everywhere. We used to joke that we'd have to get married 6 months apart so we could each be maid of honor at the other's perfect wedding. It's kind of crazy to think about now. If someone had told me back then how everything would turn out, well, I probably wouldn't have believed them. When Lisa got engaged to her college sweetheart James, it felt like everything was falling perfectly into place. James was exactly the kind of guy we'd talked about during those late night sister chats, kind, funny, and completely devoted to Lisa. I was thrilled when she asked me to be her maid of honor, though we both knew it was never really a question. We spent hours poring over wedding magazines, creating Pinterest boards, and visiting venues. It was like we were little girls playing wedding again, except this time it was real. Our parents had divorced when we were teenagers. I was 16 and Lisa was 15. Despite the split, they had managed to maintain a civil relationship for our sake. Mom had remarried a wonderful man named Steve 3 years after the divorce. He was kind and thoughtful, always making sure we felt included in their new life together without trying to replace our dad. Dad chose to stay single, channeling his energy into building his real estate development business. He always said his daughters were all the family he needed. Both parents had agreed to split the cost of Lisa's dream wedding equally. Dad had done particularly well with his business over the years, and he insisted on making sure Lisa had everything she wanted for her special day. My little girl only gets married once, he'd say, beaming with pride whenever we showed him the plans. The trouble started 2 weeks before the wedding. Lisa and I were at Mom's house going through old family photos for the reception slideshow. We wanted to include lots of childhood pictures, Lisa and me, and matching Easter dresses, family vacations at the beach, Dad teaching us to ride bikes. We were in the attic surrounded by Dusty boxes and memories when Lisa found a stack of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. At first we thought they were love letters between our parents, from when they were young. Lisa started reading one aloud, giggling, but her voice quickly trailed off. Her face went pale, and her hands started shaking. The letters were between Mom and a man named Michael, dated around the time Lisa was conceived. They detailed their affair and Michael's desperate pleas to be part of the baby's life, a child that would turn out to be Lisa. I'll never forget the look on Lisa's face as the truth sank in. She had always been especially close to Dad, while I was the more independent one. Lisa was Dad's little shadow growing up. She followed him around his workshop, learning about tools and helping him with projects. She even chose to study business in college because she wanted to take over his real estate company someday. The confrontation with Mom was explosive. Lisa burst into the kitchen demanding answers. Mom took one look at the papers and broke down completely. Through her tears she confessed everything. Michael had been her coworker, and they had a brief affair during a rough patch in her marriage. When she found out she was pregnant, she chose to stay with Dad and never told anyone about Lisa's true paternity. She begged us to understand that she was young and scared, and that she had only wanted to protect our family. Lisa was adamant about telling Dad the truth before the wedding. I tried to convince her to wait until after the ceremony, worried about how this would affect her special day. How can I walk down the aisle with him knowing I've been living a lie my entire life? She demanded. How can I let him give a father of the bride speech when he's not even my real father? I should have supported her decision more instead of trying to protect everyone's feelings. She had a right to the truth, and I was wrong to suggest keeping it hidden even temporarily. The day we told Dad changed everything. We went to his house together. Lisa insisted I'd come with her for support. Dad was in his workshop happily working on a surprise wedding gift for Lisa. We later found out it was a handcrafted jewelry box. When Lisa showed him the letters, he sat down heavily on his workbench, the half-finished box forgotten in his hands. Dad's reaction was both heartbreaking and admirable. Despite his obvious pain and shock, his first concern was for Lisa. Sweetheart, he said, I need you to know something. Biology doesn't make a father, love does. And I have loved you every single day of your life. Nothing will ever change that. He offered to still walk her down the aisle if she wanted him to, but Lisa was too overwhelmed by everything. She postponed the wedding, saying she needed time to process. That's when things really started falling apart. Lisa became obsessed with finding Michael. She spent hours online tracking down every lead she could find. When she finally located him through social media, he was surprisingly eager to meet her. Unlike Dad, Michael had never married or had other children. He welcomed Lisa into his life with open arms, and what started his simple curiosity soon turned into something more intense. Lisa began spending more and more time with Michael, learning about her real heritage and family history. She discovered they shared a love of photography and similar mannerisms. Michael showed her old family albums, telling her she had her grandmother's eyes and her aunt's smile. With each new connection she found with Michael's family, she seemed to distance herself further from ours. This is where I made what Lisa considers my unforgivable betrayal. I couldn't stand watching Dad suffer as the daughter he had raised for 25 years slowly slipped away. One evening after Lisa had canceled yet another dinner with Dad to spend time with Michael, I confronted her. I reminded her of all the times Dad had been there for her. I pointed out that while Michael might be her biological father, he hadn't been the one sitting through every dance recital or checking for monsters under her bed. You don't understand, Lisa shot back. You get to be sure about who you are. Your dad's real daughter. I've been living a lie my whole life. Every time I look in the mirror now, I wonder what parts of me come from a stranger. Our relationship deteriorated. Rapidly after that conversation, she accused me of taking Dad's side and not supporting her need to explore her true identity. Within months, she had moved to California to be closer to Michael. What really hurt us was when Lisa decided to have a small wedding ceremony in California with Michael walking her down the aisle. She didn't invite Dad or me. We found out about it through Facebook photos that a mutual friend shared. Dad tried to put on a brave face, but I knew he was devastated. He had already bought her wedding gift, not just the jewelry box he'd been making, but also a substantial down payment for a house. He never asked for the money back, just quietly transferred it to her account, with a note saying he hoped she would be happy for the next few years. I tried to maintain some contact with Lisa through social media and occasional texts, but she was distant and cold. Meanwhile, I grew even closer to Dad. He was struggling with depression after losing Lisa, and I made sure to visit him regularly and include him in my life as much as possible. We had Sunday dinners because I wanted to take over anymore, but because I knew it gave him joy to share his knowledge with someone who cared. 2 years ago, Dad started showing signs that something wasn't right. He would forget appointments, get confused about simple tasks, and sometimes get lost driving to familiar places. After several concerning incidents, I convinced him to see a doctor. The diagnosis was devastating: early onset Alzheimer's. The doctor said that while medication could slow the progression, we needed to start preparing for the future. While Dad was still clear-minded, that's when Dad decided to put his affairs in order. He made me his power of attorney and decided to leave the bulk of his estate to me, his house, his business holdings, and most of his savings. I tried to convince him to split things more evenly, arguing that Lisa was still his daughter in all the ways that mattered, but Dad was adamant. I'm not doing this to punish Lisa, he explained. I'm doing this because you've proven yourself capable of managing these responsibilities, the business, the properties. They need someone who understands them and cares about them. You've shown that you do. Last month, Lisa somehow found out about Dad's will through a family member. Suddenly my phone was buzzing constantly with texts and calls from her. She said she had done a lot of soul searching and realized she had been unfair to both Dad and me. She claimed she missed having her sister in her life and wanted to make things right, but then she started pushing me to convince Dad to change his will while he still could. She argued that she deserved an equal share of the inheritance because he had raised her as his daughter, conveniently forgetting how she had rejected that very relationship for the past 5 years. She even suggested that Dad's Alzheimer's diagnosis might make him legally incompetent to make these decisions, implying she could contest the will if necessary. The final straw came last week when Lisa showed up unannounced at my house. She broke down, crying, saying her marriage was struggling and she had made a huge mistake moving to California. According to her, Michael wasn't the father she had imagined him to be. He was controlling, and it started pressuring her to take care of him in his old age. Since she was his only child, she begged me to help her move back home and said she wanted to reconnect with Dad before his condition got worse. When I asked her directly if her sudden desire to reconcile had anything to do with Dad's inheritance, she got defensive and angry. She accused me of being greedy and trying to keep Dad's money for myself. You've always been his favorite, she spat. Ever since I found out the truth, you've been poisoning him against me, making sure you get everything. In the end, the conversation ended with her storming out after I told her she couldn't just walk back into our lives when it was financially convenient. Now Lisa is telling everyone who will listen that I've manipulated Dad into cutting her out of his will. She's even reached out to Mom, who she had also been distant with to try to get her on her side. Mom, to her credit, has stayed out of it, saying she lost the right to have any opinion about Dad's decisions when she lied about Lisa's paternity. I'm torn about what to do. Dad's condition is slowly getting worse. Some days he doesn't remember what year it is, and he sometimes calls me by Lisa's name. I want his final years to be peaceful, and part of me thinks I should try to convince him to change as well, just to keep the peace. Lisa is still my sister, and I hate that money is causing this rift between us, but another part of me feels like she made her choice 5 years ago when she rejected Dad and cut us out of her life. The fact that she only wants to reconcile now that there's an inheritance at stake feels manipulative. And ins SE hash update 1. Wow, thank you to everyone who took the time to comment and share their perspectives. Reading through everything you guys wrote has really helped me process some stuff I didn't even realize I was struggling with. A lot of you had questions and suggested things I should clarify, so I wanted to give you all an update on what's been happening. So first, about the inheritance situation, I took some of your advice and had another long talk with Dad about completely cutting Lisa out. I picked one of his good days for this conversation. His doctor explained that with early onset Alzheimer's you get these windows where everything is super clear, almost like the old days. I basically told him everything on how, even though Lisa really hurt him by choosing Michael, completely cutting her out might be something he'd regret later if he had a moment of clarity. We ended up talking for hours. Dad started sharing all these memories about Lisa when she was little, like how she used to follow him around his workshop with this tiny plastic tool set, pretending to fix things right alongside him. He got pretty emotional talking about it, which was hard to watch because Dad is usually not a crying kind of guy, but it helped him realize that maybe his current decision was coming more from a place of hurt than actual rational thinking. So we set up this meeting with his lawyer, which, by the way, costs an absolute fortune. 3 hours of legal fees. Oof. Dad decided to set up this smaller trust fund specifically for Lisa's future kids' education. It was actually kind of brilliant how he structured it. The trust can only be used for education expenses. We're talking tuition, books, that sort of thing. No fancy cars or spring break trips being funded with this money. Dad also added this clause that Lisa has to maintain regular contact with him, at least monthly visits or calls, for a full year before the trust becomes active. His reasoning really made sense to me. He said this way he's still providing for his potential grandkids who shouldn't be punished for any of this adult drama, while also acknowledging that I was the one who actually stuck by him through everything. Plus, the contact requirement means Lisa can't just show up, grab the money, and disappear again. She has to actually put in the effort to rebuild their relationship. If I'm being completely honest, I think it's more than fair considering everything that's happened. It's helping me realize that maybe I've been carrying around more anger about this whole situation than I thought. The therapist says it's normal to feel betrayed by Lisa, but that I need to work on processing these feelings in a healthy way instead of letting her eat at me. She's probably right, but it's hard when new drama keeps popping up every other day. Also, for everyone asking, yes, Dad's newest medication seems to be helping with his symptoms. He's having more good days than bad lately, which is a huge relief. I've been recording him telling stories about our childhood when he's having clear days. The doctors suggested it might help both him and us later when his condition progresses. It's bittersweet, but at least we're making the most of the time. We have update 2. Okay, so a lot has happened since my last update, and honestly, still trying to process everything. I've been sitting here for like an hour trying to figure out how to even start explaining this Mess, I guess. Let's dive right in. Yesterday morning I got this unexpected message from Michael Lisa's by a dad on Facebook. At first, I almost deleted it without reading because I figured it was just more drama, but something made me open it. Thank God I did, because what he revealed completely changed my understanding of this whole situation. Turns out Michael has been feeling guilty about his role in everything that's happened. He said he should have told us the truth months ago, but he was afraid of losing his relationship with Lisa. Apparently, Lisa had been lying to all of us about her new life in California. Their father-daughter relationship isn't this amazing bond. She's been pretending it's actually been really strained for the past year. According to Michael, Lisa has been pressuring him to sell his house and invest in some business venture she and James got involved with. When he refused, she started guilt-tripping him about all the years of fatherhood he owed her. He said she's become increasingly manipulative, even trying to get his sister to convince him to take out a second mortgage. The business venture turns out to be this super sketchy MLM thing that James got sucked into after losing his job last year. But wait, it gets worse. Michael also revealed that Lisa and James have been having serious marriage problems. Apparently, they've been secretly separated for the past 3 months. James moved out after they had this huge fight about money. They're basically drowning in debt from this MLM stuff. Lisa never told any of us about any of this. She's been keeping up this whole picture perfect facade on social media while her life is falling apart. I was still trying to process all this when Lisa showed up at my house again this morning. This time she brought James with her. Yeah, apparently they're working things out now. They had this whole presentation prepared about Dad's estate and how unfair it was that I was getting everything. Lisa kept talking about how she'd forgiven Dad for his rejection of her and how she was ready to be a proper daughter again. I let them talk for about 10 minutes before I finally had enough. I pulled out my phone and just started reading Michael's message out loud. You guys, I wish I had recorded Lisa's face. She went from this fake sweet, understanding daughter act to straight up panic in seconds. James actually got up and walked out in the middle of it. Guess he didn't know Lisa had been lying to Michael too. After James left, Lisa completely broke down through her sobbing. The whole truth finally came out. Their perfect California life had been anything but perfect. James lost his job about a year ago and got involved with this MLM company selling some kind of health supplements. They burned through their savings, maxed out their credit cards, and even took out personal loans trying to build their business. Now they're over $100,000 in debt. Lisa admitted she'd been trying to get money from Michael for months, playing up the whole long-lost daughter angle. When that didn't work, she thought she could convince Dad to change his will and then talk me into giving her a bigger share of the inheritance. She said she was desperate and didn't know what else to do. I'll be honest, part of me felt sorry for her, like my little sister was clearly in way over her head and scared. But another part of me was just so angry. This whole time she's been manipulating everything, everyone, playing us all against each other while spinning this fantasy story about her amazing new life. The worst part is that she's been making Dad feel guilty about abandoning her when she was the one who cut him out of her life. I told Lisa she needed to come clean to Dad. She started making excuses about his condition and not wanting to upset him, but I shut that down real quick. I said either she tells him the truth or I will. She finally agreed to talk to him, but only if I went with her. The conversation with Dad was intense. We caught him on a good day, thank God, and Lisa told him everything about the debt, about lying to Michael, about James losing his job, all of it. Dad was quiet for a long time after she finished talking, like uncomfortably quiet. Then he did something that shocked both of us. He Started laughing. He said this whole situation reminded him of when Lisa was 7 and broke his favorite coffee mug. Instead of just telling him the truth, she spent a week creating this elaborate story about how the dog knocked it over, complete with a witness statement from her stuffed bear. Dad said he'd known the whole time it was her, but he let her keep up the story because he was curious to see how far she'd take it. You've always been like this, Lizzie, he said, creating complicated solutions to simple problems just like your mother. He wasn't being mean about it. Then he got serious and told her that, while he understood she was in a tough situation, lying and manipulating people wasn't the answer, they ended up talking for hours, really talking for the first time in years. Dad agreed to help Lisa and James with their debt, but with conditions: they have to move back home, get real jobs, no more MLM stuff, and go to financial counseling. He's going to pay off their debt, but they have to sign an agreement to repay him with reasonable monthly payments. This money will come from his current assets, not the inheritance. As for the inheritance itself, Dad's sticking to his original plan. The bulk of the estate still goes to me, with the education trust for Lisa's future kids if they have any. But honestly, after seeing Lisa and Dad actually connecting again, I don't even care about the money anymore. Watching them start to rebuild their relationship feels worth more than any inheritance. Lisa and James are starting their apartment hunt tomorrow. They're looking at places near Dad so Lisa can help me with his care. She's already talking about coordinating our schedule so we can make sure someone's always there for him. It's weird, a month ago I would have been suspicious of her sudden helpfulness, but after everything that came out, I actually believe she's sincere this time. I know we've still got a long way to go. There's a lot of trust to rebuild, and Lisa and James have a lot of work to do to get their lives back on track, but for the first time in years it feels like we might actually be able to be a family again, a real one. Michael texted me this evening to ask how everything went. I filled him in, and he seemed genuinely relieved that the truth was finally out. He said he still wants to have a relationship with Lisa, but maybe one with healthier boundaries this time. I think that's probably best for everyone. Someone commented on my last post saying that sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they can start climbing back up. Maybe that's what Lisa needed. She had to lose everything to realize what actually matters. Dad always used to say that the true test of a person isn't whether they make mistakes, but how they handle things once those mistakes catch up with them. I guess we'll see if Lisa can pass the test this time around. Edit. Thank you for all the awards and supportive comments. A lot of you have asked if I'm going to do another update. I probably will once Lisa and James get settled in and we see if all these changes stick. Fingers crossed. Final update. First off, Lisa and James did move back to our area. They found this cute little apartment about 10 minutes from Dad's house. It's way smaller than their place in California, but Lisa says it actually feels more like home. They've both found jobs, real ones this time, no MLMs in sight. James is working at a local company. Turns out, when he's not caught up in get-rich quick schemes, he's actually pretty good with computers, and Lisa is working as an office manager at a medical practice. The debt repayment plan with Dad is going smoothly so far. They haven't missed a single payment, and Lisa's actually been putting in extra hours at work to pay it off faster. I know some people in the comments thought Dad was being too generous by helping them, but honestly, it was the right call. Seeing Lisa actually take responsibility and work to fix her mistakes has done more for their relationship than any punishment could have. The biggest change has been in how we handle Dad's care. Lisa and I worked out this schedule where we each take certain days to check on him and help out. She handles Mondays Wednesdays and Saturday mornings I take. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday afternoons. And we alternate Fridays. It's actually working really well. Dad gets consistent care and neither of us gets overwhelmed. Speaking of Dad, his condition is well, it is what it is. The doctors say the medication is helping slow the progression, but we can all see the changes. He has more bad days than good ones now. Sometimes he gets confused about which of us is which or thinks we're both teenagers again. But even on his worst days, he seems happier having both his daughters around. Lisa's been amazing with him actually. She has this way of going along with whatever time period he thinks he's in, making him feel safe and understood. Instead of frustrated last month, we had this really tough day where Dad couldn't remember Mom had been unfaithful, or that Lisa wasn't biologically his. He kept talking about their camping trips when she was little and Lisa just went with it. Later I found her crying in the kitchen and asked if she was okay. She told me those camping trips actually did happen. She just hadn't remembered them until Dad started talking about them. She said she'd spent so many years focusing on what Michael could give her that she'd almost erased all the ways Dad had already been there for her. As for Michael, that situation has evolved too. After everything came out about Lisa trying to get money from him, they took a few months of space from each other. Now they have what Lisa calls a coffee shop relationship. They meet for coffee once a month, keep things light, and don't discuss money or obligations. It seems to work better for both of them. Michael's even stopped introducing Lisa as his long-lost daughter and just calls her Lisa, which feels healthier somehow. The inheritance situation hasn't changed. Dad's will is still the same with me as the primary beneficiary in that education trust for Lisa's future kids. But honestly, it doesn't feel important anymore. Lisa and I talked about it the other day and she said something that really stuck with me. She said the inheritance was never really about the money, it was about who Dad trusted and valued more. I thought getting a bigger share would prove he loved me as much as you. Now I realize I was measuring the wrong thing all along. I know this all probably sounds too perfect, like one of those cheesy Hallmark movies where everything works out in the end. Trust me, it's not perfect. Lisa and I still disagree sometimes. Dad still has really bad days. The debt isn't magically gone.